Hello guys, today we are doing a very special deck tech, Elenda the Dusk Rose. And well, what do I mean by special? It's special because it's my favorite commander deck since, well, forever. Okay, so what does she do really? Elenda is a 4 mana 1/1 with lifelink from Rivals of Ixalan, which is a pretty old set at this point. She has whenever another creature dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on Elenda. And whenever Elenda dies, you create X/1/1 white vampire tokens with lifelink equal to her power, which means that every time a creature dies, not only yours but also your opponent's creatures, she'll get bigger. And you can get into scenarios where your opponents really don't have a good block, or you put them in a situation that it's a lose-lose for them. If they block and Elenda dies, you create a bunch of creatures. If they don't block, you can steal life from them because she has lifelink. The creatures dying can be via a sack outlet or via destruction or a board wipe or whatever you see fit. The deck that I decided to build was a vampire Typal deck, and since this is the case, you guys may ask why I'm not building either Edgar Markov, or if I'm building an Aristocrats build, why am I not building a route Teysa? Well, Teysa, Karlov and Edgar Markov are the two commanders that you can probably think if you want to build any of these two builds that I'm kind of mixing here, but she is like the perfect daughter and blend between the two. Edgar Markov tends to be very focused on attack, and there is not that much adaptability to the other, or to what your opponents are doing per se. And Teysa Karlov is too much focused on the combo and too telegraphed to the point that your opponents can play around what you're trying to do very easily. Elenda does none of these. Elenda does what you want to do, which is still providing you with a bunch of tokens or interactions or sack outlets or lifelink or combos or whatever you want to do, and at the same time putting pressure on the board. So she has the presence of Edgar Markov and the strengths of Teysa in terms of being able to keep your board and engine going at that point. So what does the deck really do? This is a high-powered Dusk Rose deck centered around a strategic blend between sacrifice, token generation, and value engines that can either put so much pressure on the board that your opponents cannot deal with the amount of draining that you're doing, or simply by comboing out. The deck has a bunch of combos that we are going to talk in later on during the video, and those combos are very easy to assemble. Well, some more than others, but you always threat to giving the right opportunity. You're comboing out of a situation from a game that you were not supposed to win otherwise. To abuse her abilities, we are going to use a bunch of different types of cards that engage well with her triggers. The first ones that we are going to talk about are Aristocrat type cards. Those Aristocrat cards are Blood Artist, Bastion of Remembrance, Cruel Celebrant, and the new Whisper Drinker Vampire, which is a very welcoming new card to improve the deck draining ability. We also have some cards that can combo on their own with another card that we are going to talk about later on the videos, and that can boost the potential of the aristocrats that we just mentioned. Those cards are V2 Thorn of the Dusk Rose, Cliffhaven Vampire, and Marauding Blight Priest. We have some sack outlets to help trigger all of this and make Elenda bigger, or create the tokens that Elenda creates on the spot by sacrificing her. Those sack outlets that we have are Bartolome del Presidio, Indulgent, Aristocrat, Tarian's Journal, Yaeni, Undying Partisan, Phyrexian Tower, Skull Clamp, Master of the Dark Rites, and the biggest of them all, Viscera Seer, which is a favorite of mine. For token generators, to feed Elenda, we have March of the Canonized, Charismatic Conquistador, which is a very brutal card nowadays, Felicia Fang of Silverquill, Mavrant Fane, Dusk Apostle, Breach of the Schism, and Elenda's Hierophant. With so much life gain and death triggers, Elenda Hierophant does double duty. If she falls, she will work as a mini Elenda, generating a lot of tokens in the process. We also have some vampire Typal value cards like Champion of Dusk, Soaring Imperious Bloodlord, captivating vampire that has some silly interactions with the amount of tokens that we all create, Dusk Legion Sergeant, Clavilenio from the new Precon deck, Phantom Seeker, and Cordial Vampire. This last one is particularly brutal as it triggers not only on your creatures dying, but it also triggers when your opponent's triggers die. And also it triggers double with Elenda because Elenda also triggers when creatures die, which will make her insanely big super fast. And speaking of making Elenda bigger, we also have to talk about counters. We have three main cards that focus on that. The first one is Blade of the Bloodchief, the second one is Tarian's Soul Cleaver. Both of them do pretty much the same thing. You can give the ability to give Elenda's Death Hunger to another creature, so they trigger when stuff dies, and in the case of Tarian's Soul Cleaver, whenever someone sacrifices a treasure as well, or a clue nowadays, which is very common. Or you can boost Elenda ability by having one or two of them equipped on her at the same time, so whenever a creature dies, it gets multiple triggers all at once. And because we are talking about counters, we also have the Ozolith to keep the counters on the board. If Elenda is exiled and we don't have Ozolith or a sack outlet, it can go south very quickly, very fast. Card draw and values. We have Welcoming Vampire, Black Market Connections, Land Tax, Smothering Tide, the One Ring, Tevesh, Demonic Tutor, Profane Tutor, Enlightening Tutor, and Vampiric Tutor. Now, Reanimation. We do expect our commander to die a couple of times during the game, and we need to have some Reanimation cards, or a Reanimation package per se, to bring her back instead of paying commander attacks. After all, we are not playing green or red, which means that we are kinda lacking on the treasures or ramping department. Those cards are Carmen Cruel Sky Marcher, which is a very good deck on her own, Reanimate, Malaki Rebirth, Necromancy, and Neem Death Mantle. Neem Death Mantle is also very good because it can allow us to do some combos that we are going to talk about later on. And we also have a very special card, which is Gift of Immortality. This card, let me tell you, has some ridiculous synergies with Elenda. So you can trigger her multiple times per turn and keep her around. If you have Elenda equipped with Gift of Immortality and you have some sort of sack outlet, it's almost impossible for your opponents to interact with her unless they want to lose multiple cards doing so. And if they do, you still have tokens on the battlefield. And now for combos. We have two types of combos that we can do with this deck. We have the easy ones and the hard ones. And the easiest combos that you can pull off are basically around the card Exquisite Blood. So you can have Exquisite Blood plus Veto, Torn of the Dusk Rose, or Exquisite Blood plus Cliffhaven Vampire, or Exquisite Blood plus Marauding Blight Priest. These combos require an opponent to lose life, which can sometimes be more complicated than it should. However, since we have a lot of lifelink in the form of our tokens and our commander as some other creatures that we have on the deck, this is much facilitated. You only need to attack an opponent, and if they block or if they don't block, it doesn't really matter because the life gain will trigger the loop for V2, Cliffhaven, or Marauding to start the loop and basically win us on the spot. The combo is pretty simple to assemble, as Exquisite Blood wins life whenever an opponent loses life, and V2, Cliffhaven, and Marauding Blight Priest whenever we gain life, our opponent lose life, which then will trigger Exquisite Blood, so you then can start the loop, and that's pretty much how it goes. Now, for more complex combos that we have on the deck, we have Elenda the Dusk Rose plus Animation Module and Ashnod's Altar. And what do you need for this one? So you need Elenda on the battlefield, as well as Animation Module and Ashnod's Altar, and you also need another creature, a token or a spirit or whatever it is, that you need to sacrifice to add 2 colorless mana. So Elenda will trigger, you will put a +1 counter on herself, which will cause Animation Module to trigger, so you can pay one of those 2 colorless that you just added to create 1/1 servo that you can then sacrifice to add 2 more colorless that will also trigger Elenda, and you will make Elenda as big as you want her to be. So this will not win on the spot, but you can win on the spot if you have one of the aristocrats that we mentioned earlier, and if you are scared of Elena being removed from the game, you can also use Ashnod's Altar to sack Elena to then create a bunch of tokens, so on your turn you can fully swing with them and kill everyone on the table at once. Notably, we only have Ashnod's Altar on our deck and we don't run Fire Action Altar, but if you want to add and run the two, that is obviously up to you, but it will work as well. Alternatively, you also have variations of this last combo that we mentioned. You can use Blade of the Bloodchief plus Animation Module and Ashnod's Altar, or Indulgent Aristocrat instead of Blade of the Bloodchief, or you can also have Elenda the Dusk Rose plus Nymph Death Mantle and Ashnod's Altar, or Nymph Death Mantle, Ashnod's Altar, and Martyr of Dusk. Don't forget this for this last one. You need to activate Ashnod's Altar with Martyr of Dusk and Nymph Death Mantle on a battlefield. This will allow you 2 colorless, and whenever Martyr of Dusk dies, you will not only create a 1/1 but also trigger Nymph Mantle's ability. You will hold priority over the Nymph Man triggered ability. After creating the 1/1 token, you will sacrifice that token to add either 2 colorless to your mana pool, and you will then use those 4 colorless that you just added to bring Martyr of Dusk attached to Nymph Death Mantle to the board. This works with not only Nymph Death Mantle and Martyr of Dusk, but it will also work with Elenda. But for it to gain you some value instead, you can also have Elenda not be a 1/1, so you can have multiple creatures coming into the battlefield, because Martyr of Dusk will only do death triggers and coming into the board. But if you have Elenda with more than 1 power, which Death Mantle will give her +2/+2, you can have infinite tokens coming into the battlefield, because you only need to sacrifice Elenda plus 1 of the tokens that she brings, so you basically build your own board. If you only have Martyr of Dusk and Nymph Death Mantle, you will do a loop. So if you again have another aristocrat, the ones that we mentioned before, like Blood Artist effects, you can then ping our opponents down easily. Look, there are so many shenanigans that you can do with the deck that you can get a little bit overwhelmed at first. You have Felisa, that is also an engine with Elenda, because the amount of tokens that you will be creating then will double, because we will create flyers as well. You have Sanctum Seeker that will trigger on attack, so if you have a bunch of tokens you can fully swing with your vampires and it will drain your opponents for 1 for each token that you are attacking. So then if you have Marauding Light Priest, the damage will double, and because the tokens normally have lifelink, they will triple. There's a bunch of different things that you can do that are very cool with the deck. Some exclusions or cards that you can add to the deck if you want to make it also powerful. It's obviously Roaming Throne that you can pretty much put with every single commander that exists nowadays. Teysa Karlov will also double the amount of tokens that Elenda will create, and Mirkwood Bats will also trigger a bunch, as well as Zula Port Cutthroat and Elash Ilkor, which we also had on the deck previously. However, all of these cards, none of them are vampires, and I wanted to keep the deck 100% vampire Typal. Can also add Braids if you want to, which is insanely strong on her own as well, or Yagmoth. There's a bunch of different cards that you can put. If you want to lower the power of the deck as well, you can remove some of the more expensive staples that we have in order to put some more vampire type of cards that will help you on your synergies. Vein Ripper is also a new card from Murders at Karlov Mansion that I did not include on the deck because it was too expensive in terms of mana. But honestly, I think I'll give it a shot and will give an update on the deck tag below if I decided to add it. There is also one last card that I would like to mention before we conclude the deck tag for today, which is Cataclysm, which is a pet card of mine. It is not the most optimal card, and you need to be careful when you're using it, otherwise you will die because you didn't play it on the most relevant of boards, and I can attest to that. However, it is an insanely powerful card if done correctly, especially with Elenda, because of the amount of death triggers that you will have. Elenda will get huge. She has lifelink, and your opponents will be left with one creature. This is virtual and obscene and can turn a game with just one full card. I hope this deck give you a good overview over Elenda as a commander, and it prove that Elenda is the best Orzhov or Aristocrat that exists, much better than Teza Karlov, in my opinion, obviously. Do give us your opinion on the comment section down below. If you would like to subscribe or like the video, so we know that we can create more content like this in the near future about some of our other decks and maybe some of your decks if you'd like to as well. So thank you very much and see you soon.